Welcome to a Gladiator Academy soccer session on breaking the lines. And I was looking around and I really couldn't find anything realistic online. So I decided to come up with my own session, and I think this is pretty realistic. So it's going to be less of just passing, moving through the lines, and it's really going to engage the players because it's game realistic. Now the only thing that's not realistic is that it's not two directional, it's one directional. I like to do one directional sometimes simply because I want to get repetition in, and I'm only focusing on breaking the lines. I'm not focusing on what to do from transitioning from attacking to defending. But if you wanted to make it two directional, you can always add a goal here. You can always add two goals as well, just like that. Now I'm using a 2-3-1. That's the age group that I teach, but this can be changed based on your formation. So this is the defenders, the midfielders, and the forwards. So if you're playing a 4-4-2, defender, four players, 4 players in the midfield, and 2 up, and it can be moved to and changed based on your formation. So the game itself is really easy, and I want you to ignore these lines for now. They're not going to show up on the field. This is just for your reference for some things I'm going to touch on a little bit later. But really all we're trying to do is break lines like the forward line, which is here, the midfield line, which is here, and the defensive line, which is here. Again, these are imaginary lines. These aren't actual lines there. And the way these players are going to be able to see the lines is they're going to be able to look at the players and really find that midfielder line, the forward line, and the defensive line. But really all we're doing is just moving the ball, breaking lines, and trying to score. Keeping possession when we can't move forward. Okay, and that's one thing that we talk about a lot, that if we can't move forward with an advantage, then we just reset, because we always have an advantage with our 2v1 here. Okay, there isn't really going to be a situation where this player comes up, and if they decide to come up, then we have an advantage on the side, just like that. So now let's talk about how we actually break the lines. And the way that I always tell my players to break lines is to focus on players right behind the player. So if this forward player is a player that we want to break the lines from, most of the time that player's eyes are going to be on the ball, and they're not going to be able to look behind them and look forward. A lot of players don't do that as much. So this player here who is breaking this line can pop up to create a passing lane, just like that. And that's the first point that we tell our players, is to situate yourself behind the line that you want to break. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 players that are now behind this player that we can break the line. We can break the line with one pass to there. We can have a false 9 situation where the player comes in, and now we've created an overload in the midfield, right? 3, we have 4, and then we can come down and so on. So that's the first point, and it's super important that the players start behind the line that they want to break. The second point is we always want to be checking our shoulder. Because we're in kind of no man's land here, this player has the opportunity to come in and steal the ball. So we really want to make sure that as we're popping, our head is on a swivel. Okay, we're always looking behind to check our shoulder, see what's going on. Lastly, is we want to take our first touch into space. Okay, when I ask my players, where do you want your first touch to be? Some of them said, my first touch should be towards the net, and that's not true. It's not towards the net, it's towards space, because that's what we're creating. If I had a player here blocking the net, there is no reason why my first touch should be this way towards the net. That wouldn't make any sense. Instead, if I take my touch there, that's maybe even going to open this player up. And now what I can do is I have a lot more space to play with. But if I play towards the defender, that's just not going to help. So we talk about first touch into space. So let's see what this looks like if we move the ball in here. We've broken a line. Everyone's going to shift, just like that. And I actually like to keep my players about there. We have the center defender, just like that. Okay, so if that ball comes over here, We've broken this line. We have three options. We can either break another line forward, we could either stay on this line, or we can always reset. Now it's up to the player to make a decision. Let me change that this way, just like that. Now, if we decide to reset, and I tell my players this, the only reason we reset is because we can't go forward this way, so we reset to change the point of attack. So we never reset and come back. We don't really like to do that. We reset and move the ball quickly. And there are two ways that we can reset and change the point of attack. Sorry, there's one way we can reset, but there's two ways we can switch the point of attack. One is through the defenders, which usually takes a little bit longer, but is a lot safer with 1, 2, 3 passes, or we can use the defensive midfield, who I like to call the bridge. And the bridge's job is to always have a passing lane to the player with the ball. So if this player has the ball, this player should have a lane just like that. That's clear to the ball without any defender. So if this defender comes back, then this player needs to find space wherever that is, always, no matter what, no matter who has that ball. So if this player has it, this player comes up, it's this player's job to find space. And that's why in Manchester City, we see a lot of the time that center defender, like Rodri or Fernandinho, always sometimes come back into that defensive, and it kind of looks like a back three sometimes. And obviously they're going to change their body shape so that they're this way, kind of. That's the best cartoon that I have for that. So we talk about those being the most important parts. Now, the last important part, especially when we're playing in a 2-3-1, and this isn't so applicable with the older players, but still could be, depending on what you want to do. But with the younger ages, this forward is moving side to side. So if this ball is on with the right defender, I want my forward to be over here, so we're always in a diamond, just like that. And if that ball switches, then the forward moves along, just like that. And the reason we do that is pretty simple. We want to create an overload onto the side that we're at. And then this way too, this player is always engaged and doesn't really fall asleep. But I hope you liked it. Again, the most important point that we want with breaking the lines is that beginning part. You should be behind the player and you need to move into a passing lane. And if your players can do that, keep their head on a swivel, take a first touch into space after they receive it, as the ball is receiving it, then you should be able to easily break the lines.